Okay. Add a meet.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our next set of workshops. We're just going to give another minute or two for some people to get onto the session before we start. Thank you. Hi there, Anina. We're almost ready to start. If you wouldn't mind sharing your screen in the meantime while we wait for attendees to log on, and you can switch on your camera in the meantime. Thanks, Anina. Anina, if you could please unmute.
Hello, Belinda. How are you?
Hi. There we go. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You were brilliant so far.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're so excited about what you're going to be sharing with us. I know a lot of our schools do struggle with large groups, and so I think this is a really good topic for many of our teachers to engage in. If you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, so that I think a lot of our participants are already on the session. So you can share your screen, and while I'm going to remind everyone that we have the chat box, we have the Q&A. So please post your questions or your comments. We'd love to hear from you, and also to share on social media as well with the hashtag CAC2021. Anina?
Belinda, can you see the screen?
We can see the screen. We can see your presentation.
Fantastic. Okay, so we can start. Thank you very much. A warm welcome to Workshop 6, colleagues. This is absolutely wonderful being with you this afternoon, and it gives me a great pleasure to talk to you today with my team about managing large classes. On the panel today, we have my colleagues, subject advisors from all the districts in the Western Cape. We have Betsie Strydom, Deon Burger, Margie, Clarke, Chantal Ross, Michelle Petersen, Phillip, Jaftha, and Gezania, Jong, who will share with me on this platform. So, colleagues and friends, I just want to start with a few universal tips on managing large classes. And the first one is that, you know, within the time of COVID and within the challenges we are facing, where many of us are not in our art classes, those of us who had art or dance rooms, and we are in a general, or if I can say normal classroom with desks, you know, the first tip is we should not give up on collaborative grouping. That is so important, especially for the child that's a quiet learner whose voice is not easily or generally heard. Especially in creative arts, you really want to hear all the learners' voices. So if you have very little space and they're all sitting together, you know, in their desks, and they always speak about elbow interaction or pair groups, you know, where you have 2 interactions. Or you could look at, as you can see on the screen, a triad interaction where you can have 6 different types of interaction between 3 learners. One could also look at a quad interaction, and you can still see that this is possible in a general classroom, and you can have 12 interactions. And why do you want these interactions? You want the learners to check in with one another, and you want them to ask questions, you want them to guide and reflect each other. You want, you know, that 30 seconds that they can really wonder about things, contemplate around things, you know, express themselves, explore, and be creative in the class. That was now about the child that has to be, you know, connected in the classroom. But what about you? You are the teacher, you're standing in front of 48 learners perhaps, or you're standing in front of learners that you don't even know. Because of COVID, you are dealing with class groups that you normally do not have. So it's very important to find ways to just check in with your learners. And it's always useful to decide that you might want to negotiate, you know, certain hand signals before the time. And I think many of you know that, where they might raise their hands saying that they don't understand, or wave and say, you know, yes, we've got this, we're with you. A lovely way to check in with your learners would be sentence starters, you know, where you just start the lesson to say, yesterday an aha moment was, and they share that. I always use exit and entrance slips, you know, especially when things became noisy, just to settle down and just write on my little note an exit slip, and we pop it into teacher's basket as we go out or on coming in, and I can read, and it's anonymous. An ABC prompt is, of course, wonderful when you do a little bit of theory and you want to throw out A, B, C, and the learners have to bring up, you know, content or context related to the lesson. Inside outside circle is when you have a big group, but you have the hall for the day. And sometimes we do have the hall for the day, or we're outside and you have a circle inside and a circle outside, and they go clockwise and anti-clockwise, and they talk to one another and move on again. Tag is, of course, I tell you, I ask a question, my partner, and then I give some guidance. So those are little steps that you can still do, having many learners. Then, you know, the research, and, you know, everyone really, when you go and you do research about large classes, everyone speaks about stations. Now, a station model can be difficult in a large class, but I think especially our foundation phase teachers can teach us a lot about learning stations. And here you can see 4 different learning stations on the screen, where you have a small group interaction with teacher in the one hand, and then you've got your second station where you have groups that are only the learners, and they sit, you know, in their groups, like I've spoken right at the beginning. Learning station 3 is, of course, where you might have a carpet space or a little open space where they can practice. So certain groups will go there and they practice their little scenes or their choreography, or where they work creatively in a collaborative way. And then, of course, learning station 4 is where you might have, you know, laptops or computers or iPads where they can work, you know, in a blended manner. The last thing that I want to say about stations is that the teacher's planning is extremely important. It's very important that you know exactly what is your objective with every station. You don't want to just have stations and, you know, you don't really have a reason for it. You must also know about your timing. How much time do I have, and how much time can my learners spend on a station? You might only want 2 or 3 stations. Also plan what materials and devices you are going to use at every station. You know, the one station might be art material and the other one might be laptops, because that might be where, or cell phones, where you do research. And then, of course, do I need certain programs or software on the laptops or the whatever your electronic device is? And then, very important, which can be fun because that can also be negotiated, is what is the key for transition? You know, or am I going to bang a rhythm on a drum, or is there any other way that we're going to go from our station to our station? And the last thing that I want to say is that it's very important to, you know, make sure your learners know when they reach that station, what am I supposed to do here now? That you don't waste time on that. So it could be a little mini video tutorial, or it could just be in written format. But I think enough of just the general stuff. Let's move a bit closer. And colleagues, I hope you don't mind, but I would like to move into visual art now. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce Deon Burger and Margie Clarke, who are going to talk about visual art and large classes. Deon and Margie, over to you guys. Do we have Deon and Margie here? If you can just unmute yourselves.
Apologies for that. Good evening, everybody.
Hello,
I had a big greet now. Nobody heard me. I think we're still waiting for Deon, but I'll just start with saying, if we read that on the screen, there's no such thing as a small or a large class, and that was said by Ryan Greenfield. And but before we get all worried and stressed out about what he said, is that he didn't mean that there is no such thing as a large class. It's more depending on how the teacher feels about how many learners they can handle in their classes and feel comfortable with teaching. And that will also depend on the level of experience of the teacher. All right, but when we let's move on. So when we look at the advantages of large classes and small classes, we always just think about what is great about small classes, instead of thinking, you know, that there can be advantages for both small and large groups. So if we look at small groups and we look at the positives or the advantages of small groups, we know that there is we can give individual attention to learners. Welcome, Deon. You can switch your mic on. Would you like to continue with the advantages of small groups, or should I?
Hi, Anina. Can you hear me?
Hello, Deon. Welcome to the session.
Hi, thank you. Yes, we're so used to small groups and the advantages of small groups. I'm sure Margie's just discussed now the advantages of large groups, and compared to small groups, which we're so used to, you know, working with better individualized attention for learners. I'm sure teachers are already used to that, and it's easier to teach and to evaluate and give feedback. And it's more time to work in class with on class assignments and schoolwork. And you know, but as you can see, there are pros and cons for either small groups or large groups, which I don't think teachers take into consideration.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. And following on from that, the one thing that we have to take into consideration with large visual art classrooms is teacher planning and preparation. This is key, and I say this to all my teachers when it comes to planning a visual art lesson. The fun part begins when you walk into the classroom and you have fun with the learners, but your planning and preparation is the tough part. This is what's got to happen behind the scenes, backstage, making sure your art materials, you have all the relevant art materials ready for use, which means that taking the context of your communities and your learners into account, making sure that you know what communities your schools are in, and making sure that you have all the stuff that fits within your art lessons and changing your art lessons as a result to fit what materials you have. And also anticipating your learner needs in terms of time and space and media. Also, again, taking your communities, your socioeconomic communities into account, because not every school has the same resources. And then an organized teacher in an organized environment leads to an organized, productive learner. This is key. You've got to be organized. It doesn't help just to walk in and say, okay, today we're going to decide on this or that. Allocate time for cleaning up after the activity. Definitely. 5 minutes, 10 minutes beforehand. Very difficult nowadays with rotational time. Very, very difficult. And then lastly, allow time at the end of the lesson or at the end of the project to display the artwork and allow for group discussion. Reflection and self-evaluation is key as well. Margie, I think you've got some ideas to follow on from that as well.
Yes, to add to that, it's also another way to make sure that your large class is organized and disciplined is to create classroom rules at the beginning of each year. Make sure to include the learners when you create these rules, and also make sure that there are incentives and consequences for not obeying these rules. And it's important that you include the learners because they sometimes have brilliant ideas for creating different classroom rules with the incentives or the consequences. All right, it's also very important to define the group roles of the learners in their groups. And there are certain things that you can allocate to each group member. For instance, one can be a group leader, there can be a reader, a writer, a collector of material, and cleaners. But remember to switch these roles around continuously throughout the year so that one learner does not just one learner is the leader throughout the whole year. We want to give everybody a turn. Then also make sure that learners know their different responsibilities in class, and they also know what they must do at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And this can be done by maybe posting a poster on the wall of the class rules and of the incentives and the consequences, right? And when you implement these 3 guidelines consistently, and the focus here is on consistency, it will also free up time for you as a teacher so that you can have more time for forget it now. Throughout your lessons, you have more time for assessment of learning, you have more time for interventions, and you have more time for support for your learners. Thank you, Deon. Over to you.
Thanks, Margie. And by having more time for your learners, you get to know more of your learners, because it's very difficult in large classes to actually get to know each and every learner's likes and dislikes, because the larger the class, the more the relationships with learners can get to suffer. I know from personal experience that it is very difficult always to learn each person's name by heart. So I always made an effort to know their faces. And it was easier for me to know their names, their likes and dislikes, their challenges and accomplishments by their face. So I might not always know their name, but I put a face to each one's story. And that was my way, visual learning, right? And you could create a survey or a mind, they could make a mind map, a brag poster, getting to know them that way, a nice way, or put them in groups, and so that they could make a group brag post of who they are at the beginning of the year, something like that. It's a very nice way of doing it. And through that, they get to learn as a group, peers. So it's an informal assessment of how to get to know each other. And also they can learn then through that positive feedback, because some learners, they thrive on positive feedback. You know, that way you learn which learner can thrive on positive feedback and which one can take a stricter form of feedback, because some people can take that stricter form of feedback. And also that way you can also learn about creating differentiated assignments for the gifted children, and also scaffolding your assignments for the different levels of cognitive levels in your class. And this leads to also then the way of handling classroom behavior with the larger classes in the visual arts classroom. And I think Margie's got a few tips for us on that.
All right, so colleagues, it's important to remember that in a large classroom, it will obviously be a bit noisier. Your level of communication will be a bit louder, but it's important to focus on the fact that it should be constructive and learning noise going on in your classes. And a way to control this is to come up with hand signals. For instance, if a learner does not understand, they can do a thumbs down. If they do understand, a thumbs up. You can also leave this open to learners to give you ideas of hand signals that you can use, because learners are very creative. It's also important to engage as much as possible with your learners. Please, colleagues, don't sit behind a desk and tell them do your work. Remember to walk between your learners and support them throughout your lesson. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. I'm going to move on swiftly because we have not so much time, and I am very, very excited to hear what will happen in the music lesson. So today I would like to introduce Betsie Strydom and Phillip Jaftha, and they've got a little bit of a different approach to large classes, colleagues. Betsie and Phillip says, let's start with the learner first. Let's see who is the child that we have in a class. And they're going to focus especially on the senior phase. So Phillip and Betsie, over to you.
Thank you, Anina. The learners in the senior phase, grade 7 to 9, are teenagers now, and it is a time of rapid physical development and deep emotional changes for them. It can be very confusing and uncomfortable for the learner, the parent, but also for the teacher.
Okay, teenagers begin to see themselves as having certain characteristics, like popular, sporty, or different, based on their likes and dislikes, and on the ways in which they can treat it by adults and peers. So as senior phase learners are increasingly self-focused, the arts can provide an outlet for them to explore ideas and themes of personal significance.
The challenges for teachers to teach music to a large class of learners in this age category can really be a nightmare. Phillip, do you perhaps have some ideas for music teachers to manage large classes successfully?
You know, Betsie, my advice for teachers would be to maintain a positive attitude and having fun with the learners in a great way. And it's a great way to make the class fun and keep learners engaged. Therefore, proper planning and preparation for each class is of utmost importance. Involve all the learners at the same time by dividing them in groups.
Thank you, Phillip. We are going to look at 3 activities which can be used very successfully in large classes in the music lesson. The first one is a body percussion activity. When doing a group body percussion in a large class, the teacher can incorporate different elements in music which is relevant in a music lesson. Some of these elements is to keep a steady beat, to improvise with different rhythmic patterns or tone colors, timbre as we call it, and also different dynamics. Learners can rehearse and perform in groups, and in this way, the teacher can make sure that all learners in the class are engaged in the activity.
Betsie, I just wanted to stop sharing to make sure that we have sound, and I'm just quickly loading the presentation again. So if you could just give us a second for the presentation to load. Werner, I'm not sure if I am doing the right thing or whether I should stop share altogether.
Anina, if you can press Alt-Tab.
Okay, Alt-Tab, I'll do that. There we go, I've done that. I see it's still loading. Do you think I should stop share and start again?
Yeah, I think let's do that.
Okay, I'm going to stop share now. And I'm going to click on share screen. I see it's still loading now. Is that supposed to still say still loading on my side?
Yeah, I think you can just keep going.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm sorry about that. And there we go. And I'm going to share my window. And I'm going to share. Apologies about that, colleagues. And I'll press Alt-Tab again. Just waiting for it to load.
Hi, Anina. This is Peter from Technical.
Hi,
Anina,
Peter.
so, sorry, are you showing a PowerPoint or a tab?
I'm trying to show, I'm seeing a tab here. So do you think, what should I do to get out?
Yeah, so it's, if you press Alt-Tab, can you see your screen? Click
I'll do Alt-Tab again. Yeah, when I do, there we go. Can you see the PowerPoint now?
No, sadly, it's not showing. So I think I'm sorry to do this, but if you click Stop Share.
Okay.
Okay, share screen, and then just choose.
I'm just trying to, yes.
Does it give you an option of an up? Okay.
Can you just say again?
Share screen, application.
Okay, I'm clicking share screen and then?
Application. Or
application. I see entire screen, window, or Chrome.
Entire screen.
Okay, and I click on it and I say share.
Yeah, and now press Alt-Tab.
Okay, Alt-Tab. And when I do that, 3 things appear and it goes away quickly.
Seems to be in a loop, and I see you've only got 5 minutes left.
Yes.
So is it possible to just move?
Can you share perhaps from your side?
We have your PowerPoint on your side, but there's an error on it. So let me just try quickly, see if I can get it.
Okay.
So I think ask your speakers just to move forward so long.
Okay, Betsie, if you can just continue speaking about body percussion. I do apologize about this, colleagues.
Yes, of course, Anina, I think it is good enough to just say that a body percussion activity is really a very good way to manage a big class. And I think, Phillip, you've got something about singing in a round, because that is also...
Yes, Betsie, and singing around with learners give them the opportunity to practice 2 essential musical skills: harmony and beat and rhythm. Singing different parts with different people forces someone to hear their own voice with other voices and to hear how they are harmonizing with others. This is also an activity where learners will participate in groups, and therefore all learners in the class can be part of the singing activity, which they will enjoy.
Yes, Phillip, and I think I will just carry on with this one. The last activity that we wanted to share is a listening activity where we used a Padlet and to put all the different music that you are going to use in this listening activity onto the Padlet with a worksheet which the learners can then complete while listening to the music. So this is an activity which involves all learners in the class, even in very large groups. It can also be used as a formative assessment activity to determine understanding of concepts taught during previous lessons. So we really hope that the teachers will enjoy sharing music with your large classes in the music section of the creative arts. Thank you, Phillip.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Phillip and Betsie. I think we are ready to move over to dance, and we have 2 dance videos that we would love to share, but we are still battling to get this PowerPoint up. But I'm going to ask Michelle. Michelle, if you could maybe start speaking about your ideas for dance in large classes, especially in the time of COVID.
Just a reminder that we have just over a minute left.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Teaching dance classes like the big classes needs proper planning. Teaching classes like that, we need to see that there are rules. So we're talking about code of conduct. upon entering the classroom and exiting a classroom. When learners enter the classroom, they divided, say, example 6 to 8 in a group, and they will go to a designated area. That will be on a spot at the chair or at a hoop or maybe at a bottle filled with sand. Then we do a warm-up, and that is your structured warm-up, and that we call our functional activities. Skills from the previous lessons we can use to demonstrate, and that allows the teacher also to revise the previous skills. Due to COVID protocols, learners are instructed in the following way. The learners on the outer rows, they will make a quarter turn, and then the middle row will then also just lower their mask and breathe. The same with the outer rows, they will also lower their mask to breathe. Under normal circumstances, it's a very easy way to teach learners to move into smaller groups, moving diagonally as well as a circle formation in personal or free space across the floor. Short and concise instructions is very important to teach big classes. Teachers must plan with flow lessons to avoid unnecessary instructions. Separating learners into smaller groups allow learners to learn from one another and also the teacher to intervene to teach the skill very easily. The fact that the class is divided into smaller groups, intervention is important. Let's conclude our discussion with a short video. If you can play the video, Anina.
Unfortunately, we can't play the video. Our PowerPoint does not want to show. Can I ask maybe that Chantal just concludes with when you have, a normal class room without a dance space, what do you do? How do you present dance? Chantal, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Michelle said, she referred to when you are in a space with a wall. But however, many of our teachers do not have the privilege of having an open space where a hall is available. So when you have a situation where desks are filling up the classroom, what do? So what we do is we advise teachers to divide the learners into groups of 3. One group can be on the floor doing their dance. Another group can stand on their desks and perform their dance there. And your third group could be standing at the back of the class doing a peer assessment, which the teacher has provided them before the class started. So that gives them a chance to collaborate with one another, to get fresh ideas of how assessment takes place, and your informal assessment is also being done at the same time. There are different ways in which you can stimulate learners by giving them little snippets or blasts of ideas of what they could do. So if you say, for example, to them, you do an improvisation and you say, pretend you are painting the ceiling, you will have all the learners painting the ceiling that's on the desks, whereas those that are on the floor will be painting the floors. There are many, many ways. You could be chopping wood, but using exaggerated movements, or you could make it very tiny with low energy. The main focus is that your dancers have fun, that they have high energy, and that they are really excited about being there. Movement stimulates the brain. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chantal. Belinda, can we quickly go on just with a little bit of drama? Gezania, can I ask you just to give us a few tips in the drama lesson? How would you manage big classes in the drama lesson?
Yes, Anina, sure I can. I think the main focus is to start off your class with a big group focus, and normally we will start that with breathing techniques or vocal warm-ups and body warm-ups. But then, like you said earlier in the presentation, is to move into stations. So I'm going to take the example of facial expression, body language. When we teach that, your first station, you can group your learners into pairs or individual, and they can then watch on a tablet or watch on their phones a little video clip that shows facial expressions or body language, and they can complete a worksheet. Then your second group of learners, your second station, will be with you as the teacher. You have 2 groups, one group performing or a learner performing, and the other group observing with you as the teacher. And then actually they will also give reflection and feedback to the learner or the group that's performing. That means you are collaborating with your learners in informal assessment. And your third station could be where your learners are doing mime activities, which is a silent instruction, because sometimes the noise levels can be heavy in a drama classroom. So you'll have them act out scenarios by only using their face and their body. And then lastly, to conclude your class, you will actually have a reflection session. Learners can do that as homework activities, write in their journal on their experiences.
We're going to have to stop there. We've run out of time.
I think I'm fine.
Okay, thank you, Belinda. Thank you very much for that. We had a little technical glitch, but I'm sure we could give some information over. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Anina and everyone who shared this afternoon. I can see the chats. Everyone's really appreciated of the different ideas and thoughts that you've shared with them. And I'm sure if anyone wants to connect with you, they can find you in the attendees list in the menu bar and connect with you individually. Thank you so much. Now we're going to have, so you can grab your popcorn and something to drink, maybe grab your kids if you like. You can log on to the next session. There'll be 2 sessions. One is called Tadam, and the other one is Little Prince. So from here, you can log on to one of those 2 sessions. Thank you very much.